is setting the stage every moment of a conversation. We're getting the person's brain ready for the next thing that's going to happen. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm just going to read the script, and then the sale's going to happen." The sale happens starts at the first 5 seconds, right? So the next one is priming. I'm going to start putting in small seeds of thoughts in your head, and to discuss this, like to understand the concept of priming. They did, and I'm no expert on this study or anything. I'm going to probably butcher this. They did the study where people were taking a word search puzzle, and in the group, they put these words in the puzzle that were loosely related to old age. Florida, wrinkle, pain, retirement, all of this, like, there's probably 10 or 15 words in there. I can't remember them all. But just after being exposed to those words for a few minutes, the speed that they exited the testing room and walked down the hallway was reduced by like somewhere near 30-40%. But they started walking slower just because they were exposed to these words. If you have an outcome in mind, the number one thing you need to do is prime that person to think of that outcome. Does that make sense? Yeah. So none of these techniques work very well unless you have authority and you have confidence. So when we're talking about these techniques, these are language, like we talked about. It's the least important thing. And so right after that, I would ask if you're on the clock, and then how flexible you are. And I would talk about time and how time can be flexible. And I would mention how I changed my flight just a few days ago, and it was really easy, and it didn't really impact my trip very much. So I'm just bringing these subjects up on a very regular basis. There's a ton of techniques we can talk about if we have like a specific scenario, anything, or interrogation if you want to, but there are so many things that go back to nonverbal behavior and authority that I feel like just talking about the linguistics, which we could all day long, we could go way into linguistics and how to use confusion and deliberately confuse somebody's brain and all of that kind of stuff. But the base of that pyramid, the base of whether or not I accomplish what I want to do, is going to be a result of, do I have authority? Do I have enough confidence and presence to get that thing done? And if you want to, we can break down linguistics or the authority. I'll let you choose where you want to go. Linguistics. Okay. So let's talk about how linguistics work in the brain. We don't have an evolutionary part of our brain for language. We have these two things in our brain called the Broca's area and the Wernicke's area, where we can process language. When it comes to linguistics, the first thing that you want to be aware of is how we're directing that person's attention. So can I capture a person's focus, and can I lead a person's focus? If I'm speaking in a way that is not direct and doesn't capture focus, then I'm already losing persuasion. You can read all these cool scripts, all these cool books. If you don't have the social skills to speak well and really captivate somebody's attention, you're not going to do it. So one of the most common that people learn when it comes to linguistics is these statements that are called Milton statements or salad statements or whatever, but they're kind of presumptive. So a person can is a beginning of one of those. I can insert anything I want after that and help your brain to start picturing it and imagining it. So if I'm communicating in a way that is vivid, then I'm painting pictures in your head, which means that the mammal part of your brain can understand it. If my words are not creating pictures in your head and I'm not interesting enough or I'm not generating enough focus, then I don't translate what I'm saying into the mammalian brain. So a person can, let's say I want you to forget about the time. And you could just put that into a sentence. And I want to kind of start injecting these thoughts into your head earlier on without you knowing that it's happening. I would say some kind of phrase where I could inject that into a sentence. So a person can. So let's say I walk in here, we're talking about, you were asking me about the Joe Rogan podcast, and I was like, yeah, man, it's amazing how fast a person can completely lose track of time. Or I could say it's amazing how it's so easy to just completely forget about the time for a few hours. So what I did was I inserted a small pause before I told you what I wanted you to do. And you can ask me anything. So let's say I wanted you to extend the podcast a few hours or cancel your flight or whatever, which we can't do because I've got an appointment a little bit later. But I'm going to insert those phrases. And if I say completely forget about the time, let's say that that's what I want you to do. Completely forget about the time. As I'm talking, I'm saying like, just name any random subject and I'll show you exactly how you can weave it into any conversation, any subject you want. Technology. All right. And I was in Best Buy the other day looking at these laptops, and they're making so many of these advances, and they have so many things that you look at. It's amazing how easy it is to completely lose track of time. Makes sense so far? Mm-hmm. Okay. And now to get you to want to have the podcast with me longer, we'll cover another technique, and this is called embedded commands. That a lot of you can look it up anywhere on the internet. So that before we move to this next technique is the rules of this embedded command technique where you're hiding language inside of language is I'm going to pause before and after, and the command itself, like what I'm injecting or hiding into my language, has to be able to stand alone as a sentence. So, for example, I can't say, let's say I want to get you to relax. That's it. A lot of people would say, yeah, it was a really completely relaxing journey. Completely relaxing is not a sentence. Completely relax is a sentence. It's a statement of telling someone to do something. So that's the difference. And the biggest mistake most people make is that they don't pause and they're using ing words when they should be using direct commands. And ideally, if you get more advanced at this, you should be able to clip the soundbite of someone saying the hidden part, and it should sound like they're speaking an independent sentence. Does that make sense? So it should be a command hidden within it. And then we get into like ambiguities. Let's dive into ambiguities and then gestures and how gestures can play into this. So give me something you would want someone to feel like. Let's go into connection. Okay. So give me any random scenario and I will show you how we can inject language into that scenario using this phrase of feeling connected.
Go to Starbucks and order with your barista.
Yeah. Okay. And what are we talking about? Give me any topic, and I'll show you how easy it is to weave into anything just on the fly.
Like what new coffee they have at Starbucks.
Okay. So the first thing my time is limited with this barista. So the first thing is I want to establish her focus. So I'm going to do one small thing, and I'm going to say something like, it's absolutely fascinating. And very covertly, I'm pointing at myself as I'm saying the word fascinating to start off the sentence, to try to associate myself with the word fascinating so I can just buy myself a tiny bit more focus so that she'll bite onto the next sentence. So when time is super limited, it's a lot more difficult. But we're at Starbucks, we're talking about all the coffees that you said on coffees. Yeah, so there's so many coffees here to choose from. And I remember watching this documentary about these coffee makers, and it is incredible how much they take care of each other. It's a rare moment when somebody can feel completely connected to another person. So did you hear that piece? Feel completely connected. And if you cut the audio out of what I just said, it sounds like I'm saying an independent sentence. On top of that, my hand, as I was saying the word feel completely connected, was going back and forth between you and I. This makes sense so far?
Yeah, I want to comment that it feels very hypnotic. And I've noticed that about your speech this whole time. I know you're trained in hypnotism, but spending time with Marcel, it's just, I'm picking up on like, I'm getting into trance just listening to you speak. Have people commented about that?
Yeah, yes, but most of the time it's people who listen to these MP3s that I have for free to make your confidence better, to increase your mental well-being and all of that kind of stuff. So they're like going to sleep every night and listening to my voice, doing like very overt hypnosis, like to get them to sleep. And then I've noticed they come to like a training session or something with me in person. I've got a little mic on, there's speakers in the room, and I'll say just the word like sleep.
Yeah, I almost felt it on that. I was hoping that you would do it.
My first time I ever did, there was a guy who'd been listening to me for like 9 months straight every time we went to bed, and I said that S word, and he just fell out of his chair. So I had to be really careful. So let's add on to this technique a little bit. So whatever we're talking about, we can talk about picking out carpet and how someone can feel completely connected. And I could be talking about an electrician coming to my house and fixing wires. And it's amazing when that connection finally happens, when he's putting these wires together. But I'm saying the words independently, and I'm saying them with this back and forth gesture as I'm talking about connection. But now I want to hide the sentence, feel completely connected now with me. And I'm going to disguise that in speech. Have you ever heard this before? It's pretty bizarre. But I'm gonna be ambiguous about where the period is and where the comma is in these sentences. So in essence, I'm going to say the sentence like feel completely connected, period. Now with me, when I start exploring things, but I'm gonna tie those together. So give me another topic and I'll roll with it. Random toothbrush. Okay. I always use my toothbrush, because I remember this dentist I had when I was a kid. He was the only guy that really genuinely cared about me. He was the most kind person that I ever met. And it's so rare when you can feel completely connected. Now, with me, the way I see it is we develop relationships differently, especially as kids. And then I'll just roll off on another sentence. But if you clipped out what I said, feel completely connected now with me. And I isolated that in my speech. Makes sense so far? There was a thing back in the 90s where these guys would kind of come up with a lot of these ambiguities and stuff, and they are powerful, but they become powerful not because someone uses them in isolation. You're not going to just say, you're not going to sneak the phrase "buy this Bugatti" like into a paragraph, and somebody's magically going to go spend a bazillion dollars on a car. They have to be paired with confidence, authority, and leadership, and a true belief in what you're saying and self-esteem and all of that. If you use all these language techniques and you have crippling self-doubt and all of this stuff, you have to work on that other stuff first. A lot of people get wrapped around these little language techniques because it gives you a placebo. It's like, oh, I know a trick now. But they're not that effective unless you're using them in a really, I would say, a really confident way. So to expand on the language aspect of this, so confidence is probably one of those things that's such a critical element. And if we could dip into confidence really quick, the number one mistake in my lifetime training these CEOs, the intelligence folks, all of these people to develop confidence, it has nothing to do